stop the press, the BBC has finally, in autumn 2024, broadcast a report about people injured by the COVID injections. Amazing. Thought it would never come. Well, some people have greeted this as a significant shift in the mainstream media narrative about that virus and those injectables. I don't know about you, but I think this pair look a little uncomfortable here, and so they should.
An important health story for you this morning, because the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine was seen as one of the great successes of the COVID pandemic, credited with saving over 6 million lives just in the first year. But in rare cases, it was also responsible for serious side effects like blood clots in the brain, which in some cases were fatal.
Forgive me for not applauding this apparently brave and moving account of the vaccine injured. BBC, you are 3 years too late. And you're still throwing around numbers like 6 million lives saved in the first year from the injections without any evidence whatsoever for such a bizarre claim for a disease with an average age of death of 82. This upsetting and frankly infuriating film went on to tell the story of Jane Wrigley.
Jane Wrigley used to be a runner. Now she can barely walk.
Before I had the vaccine, I was a very independent, active woman doing half marathons, and now I have no independence. I can't even shower myself, can I?
No. Jane suffered a blood clot in her brain 2 weeks after her first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine in March 2021 and required emergency surgery. As other cases emerged throughout Europe, doctors gave the vaccine-induced clots a new medical term, VIT.
What the BBC never said was that as a fit, non-obese, non-elderly woman with no pre-existing medical conditions, Jane Wrigley was always at a tiny risk of dying or falling seriously ill with COVID-19, even as far back as 2020. Online, the BBC News continued this so-called courageous expose of those whose lives and the lives of their families have been ruined forever from a drug, with the story of Larry Lowe from Northern Ireland. Larry was just 54 years old. He was the epitome of health, a fitness enthusiast, running 10 kilometres most days. But now, he tells the BBC, within days of receiving the Pfizer booster, he lost all the feeling on the right side of his face. This morphed into pain, which spread throughout his whole body. Again, did the BBC ever, in 2020-21, tell Larry and the millions of others watching TV, scared at home during lockdowns, whilst they were terrified and coerced, did they ever tell them about their genuine statistical risk of dying from that particular coronavirus? No. Instead, they rolled out media medics without checking whether they had a conflict of interest from ties to drug companies and nodded sagely, whilst, in my opinion, these corrupt TV doctors urged millions of adults and children to line up, roll up your sleeves and take an injection. Maybe nobody at the BBC ever bothered to listen to other medics on social media who were trying desperately, they were despairing at the long and short-term risks of these drugs, which quite clearly in some people did not remain solely in the injection site. Maybe the BBC would argue that the emergency nature of the situation demanded a change to their normal editorial policy of impartiality. Maybe they were under pressure from the government, and who knows what pressure from pharmaceutical vested interests. BBC Breakfast went on this week to talk about the payment scheme being arbitrary and too low, which is an understatement to top all understatements, as in the case of BBC presenter Lisa Shaw.
Lisa's husband Gareth is bringing up their son Zach on his own. He made a claim through a government scheme set up to support those harmed by vaccines and eventually received £120,000. The amount of this one-off payment hasn't increased since 2007.
She died because she took the product that the government told her to get, and they believe that £120,000 is what makes up for that loss. My son will go through the rest of his life without a mum.
I've had contact with Gareth Shaw over the last 3 years. He could not get his story covered on any mainstream media outlet. Not surprising really, given that it was these outlets who ostracised anybody who dared question the logic behind an indiscriminate rollout of these drugs for everybody. And still, they don't say sorry. Pfizer maintains that the risk-benefit profile of their vaccine, so-called drug, remains positive for all authorised indications and age groups, which, if I was writing you a text message, I could only respond with a list of mind-blown emojis. Only last week, a UK study revealed that all the cases in childhood myocarditis occurred in children who received the COVID injections. A Pfizer spokesperson has said, "Patient safety is paramount and we take reports of adverse reactions very seriously. Hundreds of millions of doses have been administered globally and the benefit-risk profile of the vaccine remains positive, as do their profit margins." So confident were they, of course, that they only agreed to produce these mRNA products once they were granted global immunity from prosecution if people started dying or getting ill. Larry Lowe continues to fight for compensation and he says, "I'm not against vaccines, but this has destroyed my life. I feel like I've been left to rot." And still, countries are playing, in my opinion, Russian roulette with people's health by giving out these shots. In America, the FDA is preparing to authorise new COVID boosters without transparent data. The urgency for transparency and accountability is growing. The public deserves to know the full picture. And those affected by adverse reactions need to be heard, they need to be compensated by the drug companies, not the taxpayers. Working in a newsroom and mixing with journalists from multiple outlets, I am encouraged to feel the mood shift as the issue of vaccine side effects finally starts to gain attention. More and more people are now coming forward with their stories. Many people have now turned to support groups and online communities to share their experiences and to seek solace. These platforms have become a lifeline for those who feel isolated and unheard. Talking about the vaccine damage payment scheme, Sarah Moore, a solicitor with the law firm Lee Day, has said, "The scheme offers too little, too late and to too few people. The £120,000 payment is woefully inadequate. Some of my clients need 24-hour care. They cannot wash or dress themselves," she says. "They've been left with severe physical or cognitive deficits and will never work again." People affected by heart conditions, blood clots, autoimmune conditions and so on say that they feel they have been airbrushed out of the last 4 years. The call for more research and support is growing louder, and as we move forward, it is essential to balance the benefits of taking any vaccine with the need to address and understand the risks. This is about ensuring that everyone is protected and supported. Informed consent is the cornerstone of medical ethics. Every patient has a right to know the potential risks and benefits of any medical intervention. And this transparency is crucial for making informed decisions about our health. Truth, transparency and honesty are key to making sure that parents feel confident in their healthcare decisions. As we continue to navigate the complexities of the last few years, it is essential that all voices are heard and all experiences are acknowledged, even by the BBC.